Story 1. After years of friendship, I realized I only heard from her when she wanted something. She would put me down in front of other people to elevate herself. She was a compulsive liar and would lie about anything. The few times I seriously needed help and asked her, she was not available. It is embarrassing how long it took me to cut her off. Story 2. When she had a baby, I did not have a car, so I rented one to drive an hour and visit her, bringing lunch and freezer meals and taking care of her dog. She stopped making an effort to see me, canceling plans at the last minute and telling me I would understand when I had children. When I had a baby and was deep in postpartum blues, she never showed up to see me. She canceled one planned visit because she had a tattoo appointment and another due to a last-minute trip to the Caribbean. She did finally show up to my child's first birthday party, where she brought a gift, stayed for 5 minutes, and left because she was illegally parked. I have not seen her since. Story 3. That person kept trying to make everything a contest. If I was sharing my trauma with them, they would just say, well, at least you did not have to, with something worse. I had enough of it and broke all contact with her. We talk a bit now. If I see her around, I say hey, but I am not as close to her as I used to be. Story 4. Narcissistic social outcast who helps others by listening to their lives and spreading it as gossip. Knowing the business of many people connects her to more. This person lacks a core personality outside of being petty and vengeful to make themselves feel better. Story 5. A mutual friend gave her a cat, and when he got sick, she let him go in the woods instead of taking him to the veterinarian because she did not have the means to afford the cat in the first place. Meanwhile, she was sleeping with that same friend's boyfriend. Story 6. Basically, the disrespect. 25 years of friendship ended because it became evident that he thought he was better than me. Story 7. When my mother was dying of cancer, I reached out to my friend for support, and she excused herself, saying, I will call you tomorrow. I never heard from her until 4 months later when she found out through mutual friends that my mother had passed. I did not respond to her text. I might have ultimately reconciled with her after some healing on my part, but I heard through the same mutual friends that she was cheating on her boyfriend, whom I had known long before I knew her. I guess nobody else had the courage to tell him, so I did. I have been cheated on, and I know how it feels. She never forgave me. He is happily married to a wonderful woman now. Story 8. Bringing me down constantly because they are insecure among other things. I realized later that they do not add to my life and finally listened to my body's reaction to them. I am not safe around them, I do not like them, and I do not want them in my life. So I ended all contact and ghosted them. I am sure they do not know what they did, and they probably think their behavior towards me is acceptable, but it is not. Story 9. Secret animosity. She was instigating fights between my partner and me to the point it became abusive. Later, she sent him screenshots of our messages to get in his good books, but he ended up blocking her. We stayed together, which upset her even more. Story 10. He lied to me and asked for money to pay his rent. In reality, he wanted an Xbox One and felt the need to lie about it for whatever reason. It was $100. He could have skipped the lie and I still would have loaned him the money. When I was homeless living in a single-room hotel with my parents, my father had a newly amputated leg. I asked him when he could pay me back. Knowing all the challenges I was facing, he decided it would be easier to ignore me, unfriend me, and end a 13-year friendship. Aaron, you were a bad friend for what you did, and I am glad I am doing much better than you right now. I told your sister what you did, and one day, I will reach out to your mother and do the same. Story 11. Because he added many girls from my Facebook page and messaged them, saying that he would kill himself if they did not go out with him. Story 12. He referred to his wife and mother of his children in a very disrespectful way. He also said that if his son came out as gay, he would disown him and never speak to him again. That was the last straw. I just could not be around someone like that. Story 13. My high school and middle school best friend moved out of the college dorm because we asked him to do the dishes 15 years ago. I have spoken to him once since then. Story 14. I was tired of constantly being judged and given negative opinions about my life. Opinions that I never once asked for. Story 15. Became a completely different person during the COVID-19 pandemic. Started aligning with known white supremacist groups. Story 16. He became a father, broke up with his partner, lost his job, and I supported him through it, letting him stay at my place and giving him money to provide for his child. One day, I woke up and went to work. He said he was going to a job fair. When I returned home, my television, Xbox, and the money I had saved were gone. Story 17. Mega. It was mainly because he believed nonsense without any thought. The big one was that our local schools provided litter boxes for kids who identified as cats, and the custodians scooped the boxes daily. So outrageous, but he heard it on Fox News or elsewhere, and to him it was true. I just can't be around people who are so stupid and utterly gullible. Story 18. She would use me and my husband as a cover for her cheating. We were part of a group I introduced her to that helped promote a clothing store. Parties on the weekends, fashion shows, dinners, and so on. She would leave us to entertain or distract her husband and sometimes the kids while she was across the room with her boyfriend. Of course, the husband knew. He would watch her, and she was terrible at hiding it. He was a good man and did not deserve it. If you are thinking about cheating, why are you staying? Story 19. He always talked about how hard a time he was having, which I would normally sympathize with. The last time I talked to him, he said he was struggling mentally and having a difficult time getting his feet under him. He did not know how he would be able to keep going. I told him to look around. We were at my mother's funeral. I have not talked to him since. Story 20. My son is transgender. She said to me during a parenting disagreement, "Your child is troubled because of you. You are not doing that to my child." 30 years of friendship. Story 21. Politics, sadly. I am a centrist Democrat, and several of my ultra-far left friends do not think that is good enough. I have had several uncomfortable discussions that quickly escalated into them yelling and making nasty personal comments about me. If I express one opinion that questions the beliefs bouncing around in the echo chamber, they lose their minds. This ended one friendship completely. In turn, I am silently furious that they did not vote in recent presidential elections because the Democratic candidate was not perfect enough. Basically, they handed victory to the Republicans. Story 22. They became an alcoholic. Instead of continuing 28 years of friendship, he would rather spend every waking moment at a bar intoxicated. Story 23. She moved to a bigger city, and we could have stayed in touch through social media. However, she found new friends and a new life. She started to feel like a stranger. Meanwhile, I was still holding on to the memories of our childhood adventures. Felt like she had moved on while I was stuck in the past. We had been best friends since 6th grade. We had come such a long way. I still tried to reconnect, but the spark was gone. Our conversations became surface level and no longer flowed like they used to. We do not see things the same way anymore, and we have lost that deep understanding we once shared. Story 24. They went deeply into the whole alpha male concept. It stopped being about meeting women and became misogyny and mocking other male friends he considered betas or pathetic losers based on personality traits or hobbies, including myself. I might not be a cool enough alpha to be friends with him anymore, but I am also not projecting my insecurities so openly and obviously. Story 25. I was friends with him since elementary school. He only called me to unload his problems, ask for my advice, and then not do any of it. I am 40 now with a home, wife, and child. He is older than me, never left home, and blames everyone else for his misfortunes. I just could not do it anymore. Story 26. Paranoid schizophrenia. I got out before I became part of the big conspiracy. She said she could hear people thinking about her. Story 27. He told me he had used pedophilic content as a guilty pleasure. I froze. I did not tell anyone. For some reason, I kept the secret, and he acted like his confession was enough to justify a friendship, while hiding the fact that there was already an open case against him. He was not a friend. He used me mostly to gain access to my technology network while pretending to care. I was slowly drifting away from that world, and he was going deeper into it. At the time, I was experiencing multiple psychiatric episodes that made me less aware of what was really happening. In January 2019, I asked him for advice about Bitcoin. He told me it was a trap and that investors would lose everything. Later, I found out he had just bought 2 Bitcoin himself. He lied to keep me out, as always. Looking back, I feel used, manipulated, and disgusted with myself for staying silent all this time. I have finally told the full story to one of his coworkers. Story 28. She wanted to talk about how amazing high school was, but I wanted to avoid thinking about high school. Our experiences were completely different, and she had not moved on years later. Story 29. He did not listen to anything I said unless it was about him. Then, he would be completely engrossed in the conversation. He was also politically conservative, and no one needs that negativity in their lives. Story 30. Brexit originally. They fell down the right-wing rabbit hole, fully into Donald Trump and Nigel Farage. They have lost family over it too. Utter madness. Story 31. Never made time for me. Started to make comments about my life that I think were supposed to make me feel guilty. Envy is not a good look. Story 32. Everything had to be about her. There was no space for my life. If I accomplished something she did not, it was either downplayed or she claimed to do it better. The last straw was her crying to me during my wedding rehearsal dinner, saying I was paying too much attention to the best man's wife, who was doing my hair and makeup and had been friends with my husband since high school. She was the maid of honor, but I could not deal with her needing attention during a celebration of the upcoming wedding. Story 33. I stood by when they were justifiably criticized for things they did and said. They listened to me when I offered a different perspective. Then they lost their mind, fell down a rabbit hole, and felt they were the smartest person in any room. I was out, despite more than 30 years of close friendship. I am not my brother's keeper, and my life improved once I acknowledged that. Story 34. I was exhausted every time I spent time with him. He wanted people to take care of him. He was a 200-pound baby. Story 35. I had a good friend since 2009 or so, I thought. She was the type of person who wouldn't listen to anyone's advice. Whatever personal problems, she had always affected her mood, and she would be like, "Woe is me." But I tried to be a good friend to her as best I could. In the winter of 2024, she was going through a divorce, so again, I tried to be a supportive friend. She wanted children, but her husband did not and wanted to end things. At the end of summer 2024, she met a guy at an arcade and quickly became friends with him. She constantly hung out with him and his friends, seeing him more than her own husband and partner. She wanted him to be a part of her polycule, but he was monogamous. While she was going through her divorce, I said, "You and this guy are hanging out a lot and he's all you talk about. Is something going on?" She reassured me they were just friends. She wasn't ready for a new relationship, was trying to get herself together mentally, and was going to be single for a while. We had a bad falling out a few months ago, and I finally decided to step away from the friendship. She invited me to an event in Washington, D.C., saying she would have a free ticket for me. Then a month later, she told me the extra ticket was claimed by the guy friend, but I could come along too. I was upset because she kept putting this guy before everyone else, completely forgot about inviting me, and I was hurt by it. It turns out that the month after she met the guy friend, she cheated and told her partner about it in explicit detail, who also covered for her. She would tell her husband, "I'm too tired to drive. I'll be at my partner's place for the night." But she was actually sleeping with the guy friend a lot. Her reason for cheating was fear within her own marriage. Her partner suggested counseling, but she didn't listen to that advice either. She reassured her husband that everything was fine, but he had a hunch and hoped she wasn't doing anything behind his back. Needless to say, she is a mess and has already lost some friends because of her actions. She doesn't realize certain actions have consequences until it's too late. I don't need that kind of energy in my life, and I still don't believe she will get the mental help she needs. It has been suggested many times, but she has done nothing. Story 36. Because they revealed themselves as a person who, 1. lets things fester without communicating. brings unnecessary hostility into a conversation that could have been calm and respectful, is unkind when their friend is going through an extremely difficult time, is blind to the effort and actions their friend actually took to be there for them regardless of their challenges, chooses to blame their friend for not maintaining the relationship when the friend actually initiated most of their communication, is not capable of taking accountability for their part in the fallout, lies to mutual friends and throws their friend under the bus like a clueless victim for not talking to them when they never replied to their friend's message, prefers blocking their friend rather than responding to said message. You are nearly 50, you should know better by now. Story 37. I was always the one reaching out. Then there was an event we intended to attend together. I asked if he knew which weekend it was. I spoke to him in the morning and asked. He said he was at the venue the day before and that it was not happening. 2 minutes later, I found out it did happen and he was there. I tried to call him, but there was no answer. It has been 3.5 years with no contact. Story 38. My friend and I were obese and needed to get our lives together. I said, everyone is saying we, as roommates, are going to fail. I received a lot of fatphobic comments about us and I was tired of it. I said, girl, we are in control. Let's lose weight, get healthy, and stay true to ourselves. She kept buying unhealthy food, and I called it out every time. I said, buy a small amount of whatever you want, but don't buy family or party-size packages. Let's walk around the complex. We had 5 dogs, and I was walking them myself and even jogging with some of the younger ones. Every time I asked her to join me, she made some excuse. We started arguing a lot over it. I kept telling her, let's try again every day to do better and get more steps in. But I was always met with resistance. I ended up losing 70 pounds. From what I heard through her doctor, since we stopped talking, she is very unhealthy and at risk for heart attack, stroke, and severe sleep apnea, conditions that could threaten her life within a year due to her unhealthy habits and mindless eating. I worked with every excuse and said, let's start small, smaller than small, microscopic. Let's just start being healthier. She couldn't do it. As I said, we don't talk anymore and I don't want to. I don't know what she is doing now, but I am still slowly losing weight and doing my best with my current situation until I can do better. Story 39. I realized that even though she was an amazing person, she and I brought out the worst traits in each other. She also caused unnecessary drama in my friend's life because she couldn't keep something I trusted her with to herself. She and I were friends with one half of a set of stepsisters, meaning I was friends with stepsister A, and she was friends with stepsister B. Stepsister B and I used to be friends but had a falling out, and every time I saw her, she was unnecessarily rude to me. She completely ignored me when I said hi, was disgusted when I mentioned, out of surprise, that her due date was on my birthday, showing outright distaste for me. I heard that stepsister B was moving to my complex, and I had a mini panic attack about it and told my friend. I knew I was being ridiculous and just needed to talk to someone about my anxiety. My friend then told stepsister B about it. Stepsister B told her mom, who then went off on my friend, stepsister A, who had nothing to do with the situation. It was then I realized I couldn't trust my friend, and I ended the friendship. She was not this way with other friends, so I know it was us bringing out the worst in each other. I ran into her mom when I was pregnant a few years ago, found out she was doing great, and told her mom I wished nothing but the best for her. Story 40. A person I knew was Puerto Rican and would hang out with non-white people and use the N-word like he was black. Then, when he was with white friends from high school, he used the N-word in a non-black way. Total chameleon. I do not respect that person. Story 41. It was actually a group of 6 fellow guys. I moved to the same town as them when I was 10. 2 of them lived within 200 yards of me, bullied me every day we walked to school, literally made me suicidal, which they thought was hilarious. Then middle school ended, and I went to a different high school while still living in the same town. I never made any attempt to contact them, but in my sophomore year of high school, I had a falling out with the kids I'd become friends with. They were undereducated and overly opinionated, a tough combination to handle. These kids were borderline geniuses, and one of the social traits I emulated was learned from the aforementioned 2 guys, where you just attack whatever the other person says. Then guy one called me randomly on a Friday night, telling me to go over to another kid's house who I knew from middle school and liked. He said the names of other people there whom I liked, and since guy two wasn't there, I went. Turns out guy one was now dating a girl who I'd asked out in 5th grade and who had turned me down. He couldn't stand the fact that, before social media, I had no idea about it. She wasn't even that good looking. I had only asked her out because she also liked basketball, and I thought that would make for easy dates. As the new kid, I naively thought that having a girlfriend would normalize my presence. Some of the other girls there tried making fun of the CDs I brought with me. I always had some in my backpack. I snapped back, and some of the other guys thought it was amusing that I could stand up to girls they didn't dare cross. So they kept inviting me out. At the time, I was elated to have companionship again, since I was an only child and overlooked guy one constantly setting me up and making fun of me. Within a few months, guy two reemerged from another friend circle and started hanging out with this group, making it a total of 7, including myself. They would always target me at every opportunity. I was overweight and didn't like myself much. I believed I deserved it, but hey, we were all friends, right? I had enough self-respect to defend myself, which only encouraged them. Even managing to buy us alcohol every weekend because I looked older didn't help. The cycle repeated. We went to different colleges but kept in touch. We always hung out during summers. After my freshman year of college, I got into great shape, but they even made fun of me for that. We graduated. I moved far away and made truly awesome friends, but I didn't have a lot of money, so I missed all the trips the hometown group took and thought I was missing out. A few years later, I planned a trip to a cool town I discovered near me, and guy one and guy two made fun of me the whole time. At this point, physically, I could have just fought them, but when I got too escalated, I would leave. That happened several times on that trip. If guys 3 through 6 ever told them to stop, it had no effect, so the behavior was being validated somewhere. We hit our 30s, all started getting married. We were all groomsmen in each other's weddings. It seemed great that we had all stayed friends for so long, but the same behavior continued at weddings. The pandemic hit. We started doing Zoom chats over drinks about once a month, so I was seeing the group more regularly than I had in 20 years. From the moment we set a date and time until the Zoom started, I was incredibly anxious, thinking about possible topics and how to defend myself. Then the chats would be fun enough. Then our 40th birthdays rolled around. We had Zoom birthday drinks for the first 3. Everyone attended along with other friends they had retained. Those were fine. Then my birthday came around, and 4 of the 6 missed it. 2 claimed, including guy one, that they couldn't focus on a fantasy baseball draft while attending my Zoom with 20 other people. 1 claimed he forgot to sign on. Guy 2 joined but said he had to leave after 15 minutes, even though he had joined our other Zoom calls over the past year, even when he was with family or driving. I inferred this was because he didn't see a viable path to make fun of me with too many people there from outside our circle. That was the last straw. I talked to a separate friend about whether to send one last message telling them off, but he reminded me that the best revenge is living a good life and not giving them the satisfaction. A few months later, after a mild message in a group chat didn't get a single response, I blocked all their phone numbers, email addresses, and social media profiles. I even deleted my old Reddit handle since I thought guy one had found it and had a history of screenshotting posts of other people we knew and mocking them, so I realized he was probably doing the same with me. I regret not physically confronting guys 1 and 2. As for guy 3, he was probably the one validating the behavior behind my back. Guy 4 was not a bad person but was mostly just guy 2's and guy 3's friend. Guy 5 turned out to be a creep. We knew but tried to be loyal. It wasn't worth keeping in touch with someone who was a creep and selfish, even compared to the others. As for guy 6, it was actually his house I went to that restarted all this back in high school, and I always liked him. He called me and left me a voicemail on my next birthday, even though I had blocked his number. We're still in touch, so that's good. In short, value your time. If people in your life deliberately belittle you to make themselves seem cool or successful, get them out of your life before you waste decades. Story 42. I was the rebellious friend who settled down. She was the rebellious friend who could not accept that I settled down. Story 43. She would skip study nights in college to meet random guys she was connecting with online. One time she hooked up with a guy she thought wanted to date her if they became intimate. Afterward, he dropped her like a newborn giraffe, and she confided in me how mad she was that she got involved with him in the first place. She wanted to get back at him for using her and told me she was going to report him for assault. I shut that down and told her if she did that, I would go to the police myself and report her for filing a false assault accusation. She was very upset that I wouldn't take her side since the encounter was completely consensual at the time, and she didn't want to talk to me again. I had been meaning to find a way out of that friendship anyway, as she was immature and difficult to be around as we became adults. Story 44. He blocked me when I got a boyfriend. We had been friends for years. In a way, it was comforting that he showed his true intentions, so I knew he was not a good person at least. It still hurt, though, knowing he never cared about me as a person and only wanted me romantically. Story 45. She thought it was okay to say really rude things about other cultures based on what she saw on the social media platform TikTok. One day, she cursed my friend out while we were trying to console her. After asking her to apologize, she said we were trying to cause drama. 3 years drama-free thanks to her. Story 46. She had a habit of preying on depressed men by dating them and then immediately cheating once she saw another depressed man. She treated her love life like a game of hopscotch. Unfriended before she could try it on me. Some of her previous victims are now my friends, and she has received averted status among our friend group. She is still out there somewhere. Story 47. Because they betrayed me and our 10-year working relationship in seconds to appease bosses they had known for barely weeks. Story 48. I was always emptying my cup to fill hers. She knew she was the prettier friend, so I think she just kept me around to feel better about herself. She was always one-upping me or saying how much she had it worse than me, no matter what I said or what I was venting about. I started planning my escape from our friendship when she began drinking to cope with things and ended up drinking and driving. The first time she got a driving under the influence offense, I helped her out. The second time, I told her she needed help, but she refused to make any changes. I ended our friendship and blocked her number. She still tries to contact me 8 years later. She is now in her mid-30s, and from what I hear through the grapevine, she still lives at home and is an alcoholic who self-harms and refuses to get professional help. You cannot help someone who will not help themselves. So I have moved on and have never been happier to do so. Story 49. After 10 years of friendship, I realized that it was almost always me who sent her messages to catch up and see each other. Above all, she never truly supported me in my passion, which we share at different levels because my level is lower than hers. She did the minimum to maintain this friendship. Today, we see each other sometimes, but it will never be the same again. Story 50. Found out he was a rapist. My best friend told me what he had done to her. Then we looked back on a story he told us. Red flags were everywhere, but we've been friends since high school and we're big gamers, so my brain just overlooked it. Looking back now, I hate myself for not realizing he was a terrible person. Story 51. She was very kind to me in private during one of my worst times, but to other people she would tell false stories. Because she included truths I had shared with her in confidence, the stories seemed believable. It caused everyone I cared about to distance themselves from me, making her the only person I could rely on. After a year, I realized what was happening because my father was doing the same thing. That was rough. Story 52. Completely stingy, did not contribute to plans, and was manipulative. She made the most money in our friend group and was fine accepting treats at restaurants or bars but never reciprocated. She comes from a well-off family, and we do not. She has no responsibilities like children. There is no excuse. She is just stingy. Fine, not the worst, but feels unequal. We had a girls' trip, and she was supposed to split the rides with me, but when it came time, she acted like we were splitting more than 2 ways despite having an explicit conversation that it would be just us covering. She was clearly trying to manipulate me. She insisted on this trip but did none of the planning, except picking one restaurant for dinner at my insistence that ended up being in a food court and did not have options for our dietary restrictions. Clearly, she did not do even basic research or take any care. I felt like I was planning and leading the whole trip, and I could not relax. On the final day of the trip, after going to an amazing brunch and walking around, I said, "What next? I do not want to pick." She mentioned doubling back to do something we had passed, and I said I did not want to do that. She snapped at me and said I had to contribute if I was going to shoot down her ideas. I asked her what I shot down, thinking maybe I had been complaining while tipsy. It was just that one thing. I was flabbergasted and could not mask my annoyance anymore. She is single and kept bad-mouthing my boyfriend. She constantly only takes care of herself first. She manipulates any situation to be what she wants without actually saying it directly. She picked fights with me and our other friend on the trip. She lies about serious things like domestic violence. I just could not take it anymore and stopped making space for her. Story 53. She worked 15 hours a week. I worked 70. She complained I was not communicating enough to be one of her bridesmaids. I told her anyone who lays on guilt that thick to someone trying to keep their head above water in a new career is out of touch. She told me I could not be her bridesmaid. I responded that I was done being her friend. We had a trauma bond, so the friendship was intense but not meant for the long term. Story 54. They excluded me from everything while claiming everything was fine and even made plans in front of me. It hurt because they were my best and only friends, but they gossiped about everything. After years of that, I don't miss them anymore. Story 55. I ended the friendship because he was a pathological liar who constantly forgot to bring his wallet every evening. He would drive from place to place to find whatever bar or diner our friend group was at without him. There, he would order food or drinks and then remember his missing wallet, resulting in us having to pay for him. He promised us he was good for it, but he was not. At the same time, he casually spoke negatively about whichever member of our group was not present that evening. The friendship remains ended because he died of brain cancer. Story 56. He talked a lot of nonsense about me to a girl we both liked. She was interested in me but not him, which made him very jealous. She saw through his behavior and we started dating. He couldn't handle it. We were all hanging out at his place one day, and she was showing some public displays of affection toward me. In response, he took a shot of steroids in front of us, which shocked us. We both left immediately. I spoke to him once afterward, but there was no apology or admission of guilt. He blamed me for the connection with the girl and didn't mention the steroid incident. I believe in loyalty among friends, but the way he handled the situation was immature and toxic. Story 57. I became the only one putting in effort to keep the friendship going. She moved to California after a while when she broke up with her ex, who was my ex's brother. My mom and I helped her to the airport and gave her some money just in case. I always initiated conversations. She even told me that her boyfriend, whom she moved for, scolded her for not reaching out to me. I hadn't seen her for 2 years when she told me she was coming back to the state and would be staying with her parents in New York City. I tried hard to make plans to meet up with her in New York City, even for a short time. She never did. She barely responded to me. She was only in New York City for about 3 days and said things like, "I'm so jet-lagged, and my parents always wanted to do spontaneous things, but never tried to make time to meet up." My therapist helped me write a Dear Man response, which I sent to her, but she never replied. That was the last message I ever sent. I still feel sad about it 2 or 3 years later. Story 58. When he gets drunk, he is a nasty piece of work. He insults all his friends and talks trash about where we all are from, even though he is from a different town and owns property where we are from. If a man called him out, he would become threatening. If a woman called him out, he would just give her a hard time until she left. I would call him out while he was sober, and his reply was always, "If I can't remember it, it didn't happen." He would always criticize parts of my lifestyle and actively sabotage any relationships I was in. The final straw came on my birthday. He texted me asking why I did not tell anyone it was my birthday. I told him my birthday plans always go badly, so I stopped celebrating it. He told me about an event in 3 days that he thought I would be interested in and said that if I wanted to go, he would rally our friends and we could all go together. I said yes. Over the next few days, I received numerous texts all saying the same thing. This person dropped out, that person dropped out, these people dropped out. The day of the event arrived, and he sent me a text asking what time it started. I said 7 p.m. He replied, "Oh, I can't go. Manchester United is playing on TV today, and if it goes into extra time, it will overlap." I said okay, and I have not spoken to him since. You know what really annoys me? The next time he contacted me was a year later, asking if I was going to watch WrestleMania. A whole year had passed, and he did not even text to ask why I hadn't been in touch. He just assumed we were still friends. Story 59. He spent 6 months making me a paranoid wreck. He turned me into a really bad boyfriend with trust issues with my now ex. Then, when I had pushed her away so much, he swooped in as the hero. Luckily, it only took one date for her to realize he was a scumbag. She must have realized what he had done to me and begged for me back. I never spoke to him again. I did cause him some harm before that, but it has now been 20 years. If I saw him today, I would probably break his nose. Story 60. An entire friend group of guys, actually. In high school, I fooled around with this girl a lot. Neither of us was ever interested in something more and moved on amicably. 6 months later, she began an on-and-off relationship with my best friend that lasted over 5 years. Multiple times during this period, there were serious questions about whether she was involved with another of our friends, including one time when we caught her topless in his kitchen. After their difficult 5-year relationship ended, a different friend dated her for about 4 months. The kicker: I learned last month that she is now married to a 5th member of our high school group, and we are in our 40s. Whenever I hear anyone say, "She belongs to the streets," I always think of her. Story 61. I came out to her as bisexual. She used to call me her straight Stanford. I am still friends with the other woman who called me her straight gay male friend. They were both wrong because I am not straight or gay. I am bisexual and demisexual. Story 62. She would rather be with a man who treats her badly than be alone. She came to me saying she was done with him, telling me about the things he had been doing and reading me the texts he had sent her. I told her how he was trash and that she did not need him. There was lots of emotional abuse. She said it was not physical, but I am not convinced. As we discussed the next steps for her to leave him, he texted her, and she went right back home. I messaged her repeatedly and received short, quick answers like, "Just living life." But we no longer talk. She is so terrified of being alone that she stays, despite knowing what he is like. She has supportive people and places to go that would help. But she is too embarrassed to leave now because you do not just quit a marriage. Story 63. We were friends for over 30 years. When I said I was moving to Ireland, he took the news the worst way possible and showed no enthusiasm or happiness for me and my girlfriend, now wife. He had always struggled in life, from school to work and relationships. Even though we remained close when I moved, once he found out he had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, he started using it as a crutch for everything. Suddenly, I didn't understand him anymore, even though I was the one to notice his medication was working and gave him all the support I could from such a distance. He began taking the maximum dose of his medication almost immediately and didn't like when people pointed out that the medication changed his personality drastically. He suddenly decided not to talk to me again for a year. I had to go back home because my father needed emergency surgery. He knew about it through his girlfriend and didn't have the dignity to call. Finally, he decided to talk again, his decision obviously, and unloaded everything he believed I had done wrong. I let him vent and we resumed talking. This time, however, I felt like I was stepping on eggshells at all times, and that wasn't a friendship I wanted to keep. The last straw was when he lashed out at an obvious silly comment I made about priests and children. He is not religious at all. Then I decided to end it. In the end, it turned out it was all fueled by jealousy. He couldn't bear to see me thrive professionally or in my relationship. My wife and I started recalling some things, and it became clear that his behavior was toxic from the beginning. If we had him over, he wouldn't come if certain people, other friends of ours who never did him any harm, were coming. If we asked him to bring a wine to match the meal, He would bring a random beverage of his choice. When my wife and I had broken up, he did his very best to keep us from getting back together. The list goes on. These are more words than he ever deserved. If you have a friend that makes your gut feel uneasy, take a good look. They might be a jealous leech. Story 64. After 30 years of arguably being best friends, he ghosted me because I posted content against the taco organization and its supporters. I feel it is partially my fault for not quietly accepting that he is entitled to his feelings, and we could have respected that difference. I later found him on Megan's list and felt less bad about the loss. Story 65. Every conversation was an emotional breakdown. She did have mental health issues and was on medication, but even then, I never knew what could sometimes trigger her. This is a difficult story. She developed a crush on a guy who was a mutual friend and constantly bombarded him at work. She became upset when he did not respond quickly and came crying to me. I explained to her that she could not do that while he was working. Eventually, he had to block her, which made her totally unhinged. This kind of behavior went on constantly, and I could no longer deal with it. When I decided to end our friendship, she turned on me, saying many bad things about me to others, who then blocked her because they realized she was unstable. Story 66. For clarification, I am a man. Former elementary school best friend who was a boy. He dated the girl I had a crush on at the time. That alone was not an issue, but I later found out he was only dating her to rub their relationship in my face, always showing affection when he knew I was around. He then became a bigger bully toward me than anyone who had bullied me before. Among other things, he would tell me that she wanted him because he looked better and would also tell others that I would never find a girlfriend. Former high school best friend who was a girl. She dated a guy 7 years older than us, which was a massive age gap in high school. This boyfriend was the most manipulative person I have ever seen. He would threaten me just for saying hello to her and talking to her when he was not present. He seemed determined to believe I was trying to steal her from him, despite me showing no intention beyond friendship, which she knew. Over time, I felt less comfortable talking to her because I was scared of him and what he might do. When I was finally able to talk to her with minimal threat, I pleaded for her to reason with him. It was no use. She was too attached to him by that point. That was when I knew our friendship was over, and we have not talked since. I decided it was not worth risking my life to salvage what was left of a severed friendship. Unlike the boy in my first story, I cannot fully resent this girl because before her boyfriend came into the picture, she introduced me to another girl. This other girl later became my best friend, and we have been close friends for 17 years. The two of them, my now best friend and the girl who introduced us, also stopped being friends after they had their own falling out. Story 67. I hit the gym, gave up alcohol, and started eating more healthily. I generally began working on myself across the board, and friends told me the difference was noticeable immediately. I seemed happier and more confident, and I felt that way too. One friend repeatedly told me, "You don't need to change. You don't need to give up drinking. You look great as you are." The last comment might seem supportive, but it continued well after I explained that I wasn't getting in shape to meet anyone else's expectations, and that I genuinely felt healthier and more positive as a result. More than ever before in my life. In the end, she moved away, and I stopped making the effort to stay in contact. We drifted apart, and frankly, it's no great loss. I got the impression that she wanted me to remain as much of a disaster as she was. When I got myself out of that hole, I remained supportive of her and never pressured her to make any changes. But all she did was try to convince me to jump back in the hole. Well, really. Story 68. I realized that she is only friends with you if you support her or if it is convenient for her. She treated others poorly while being supported by family and a few friends. Story 69. He started smoking crack and stole $80 from me. I could not pay my power bill that month because of that. Story 70. She tried taking selfies with me at my father's funeral service. I don't even know what was going on in her head, to be honest. Story 71. After years of an incredibly close friendship and working literally back to back, one day he just gave me the silent treatment. I did not understand why. He spent years not talking to me while still having our desks next to each other. One day, another friend told me he was ready to make amends, but did not know how to approach me after all this time. Stupidly, I took the first step. It turns out the night before he started this, there was a situation in which he was not present and there was a misunderstanding. I did not even know this misunderstanding had happened. The story got to him with the misunderstood part of it, and instead of talking to me, he decided not to talk to me anymore after being basically best friends for years. He literally punished me for almost 3 years for a wrongdoing I was not even aware of. After that, he pretended to have our friendship like it was before, and I was initially happy that everything went back to normal. But then I kept thinking that if, after everything we had gone through and me supporting him in hard times, he could treat me like that, he was not my true friend. For unrelated reasons, I left that job and moved to another city. He tried to keep this friendship, and so did I at first, for old time's sake. But something had already been broken in me. I started drifting apart until I admitted to myself that I just did not want to be friends with him anymore. I kept texting back when he got in touch, but with the basic politeness you use when talking to an acquaintance. It was not resentment or punishing him back. I just did not care. Eventually, he stopped texting. Story 72. We were very close in high school, but after I went to college, she decided to quit college despite receiving a large inheritance that would have covered her tuition and more. She married her high school boyfriend despite having serious reservations and me trying to talk her out of it. Her reasoning for still marrying him was, I already bought the dress. She ended up cheating on him less than a year into their marriage, and in retaliation, he withdrew hundreds of thousands of dollars from their joint bank account and left town. We did not see each other for almost 2 years after I left for school. When we reconnected, I learned she had started dating a police officer 20 years her senior who was a fervent white supremacist. I could not believe the racist and homophobic things coming out of her mouth. It was horrifying, and I never spoke to her again after that. In summary, she was a sweet, smart girl in high school who changed drastically. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.